Watch more, feel more. Dell.
Shall we settle down then on a Monday after the high tensions of an India-Pakistan clash over the weekend? Reasonable tension between Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, and a star-studded opening weekend that featured South Africa, Australia, the West Indies, and England? Or shall we not? Shall we still get a game that will give us plenty to talk about? It's time for Afghanistan and Scotland to show up with their first appearance of the Super 12s. Afghanistan's first game of the campaign. Scotland outstanding, pipping Bangladesh to make it to Group 2 as B1 from their group. And this is our build up to that game on Maruti Suzuki Presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by Dell. It's a very good evening to Tom Moody and a very good afternoon to Peter Borren. I think this is the first time we've got a mix of Perth and Amsterdam live on our show. So that can only happen in a T20 World Cup. So I'm quite excited about that. Gentlemen, good evening, welcome. And the toss has gone down curiously in favor of Mohammad Nabi, who wants to have a bat first at Sharjah, which intrigues me, Tom, given we saw a game yesterday where suddenly there was a different Sharjah surface between Bangladesh and Sri Lanka.
Yeah, and it wasn't that welcome. It was great to see a good batting surface. We're so familiar with good batting surfaces in Sharjah. Certainly all the replays I see that go back about 30 years indicate that Sachin Tendulkar tended to bat on a very flat wicket in Sharjah. But, yeah, I had to get that in just before you got it in. The interesting point is Mohammad Nabi electing to bat first. Now, I think that's purely down to the fact that they see their strength being their bowling. So they feel that whatever score they get, hopefully they're looking to get a pass score, whatever they feel that is. Let's say it's 160 to 170. And they're going to back their bowling, which is clearly their stronger point, to be able to defend that.
That's interesting, though, Peter, from what we have seen. You'd think Bangladesh also mentioned at the toss, even though they lost it yesterday, that they believe their strength is also to bat first, albeit in an afternoon game. But we have seen dew come in at times. Are these tosses as big as they are in the early parts of the Super 12s, teams like Afghanistan and Scotland?
Well, I think it's fair to say in the last we've seen so far in the Super 12, but also at the end of the first round, I think that's 7 games in a row won by the chasing team. So yeah, it's an interesting call. Obviously, I agree with Tom. They see their bowling, and particularly with Mujib, Nabi himself, and Rashid, it's never going to be an easy chase for Scotland. But yeah, 7 games in a row won by the chasing team. I don't think Scotland will be too unhappy about getting to have a bat later, maybe particularly if there's a little bit of dew that comes in.
Yeah, from your experience recently in the UAE, Tom, was Sharjah better off on venues? We saw India struggle with the ball in the second innings in Dubai yesterday. When it comes to dew, Afghanistan rely a lot on spin. How was Sharjah from what you saw recently?
Well, interesting enough, Sharjah doesn't tend to have the same sort of dew that other venues do in the UAE. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be the case this evening, because dew tends to have a bit of a mind of its own. Sometimes you expect it to fall, and you expect it to be quite heavy, and other days, and on those days, it doesn't happen at all. So it can be a little bit of have a curious mind of its own. But at the end of the day, I'm sure that particularly Afghanistan have played so much cricket in the UAE, and the experience of the likes of Mohammad Nabi and Rashid Khan will be very clear on exactly what is the right move at that venue, given the volume of cricket they've played there.
Yeah, not only a lot of cricket in the UAE, as Tom Moody points out, but a lot of cricket at Sharjah in particular, where Afghanistan have an excellent record. 9 wins out of 12 for the Afghans in Sharjah. Scotland have played 3 games there. They've lost all 3. Their victories in round 1 came outside of Sharjah, but that's what we've got for you. Afghanistan are familiar with these conditions. Scotland were impressive, mighty impressive, efficient, Peter, in round 1. This is where there are those who are skeptical perhaps of whether they match up with the big boys. This is where that sort of conversation comes in. Can they be a force? Can they at least be a team that is respectable in the Super 12s? What are your expectations realistically from Scotland now that they're in the Super 12s?
Yeah, well, what you're going to get from Scotland, they're a professional outfit. They know what they're doing. They might be a little bit limited in terms of particularly their bowling attack. It's a workmanlike attack. But what you're going to get, you'll see a team that they fight hard. And of course, that's a bit of a cliche when some of the lesser teams get to this stage, but they really are very organised, right from the their organisation, the Cricket Scotland, down through to their national, all the way to their national team. They know what they're doing, and you've got a very good captain in Kyle Kutzer. These guys have played a lot of cricket recently, a lot more than Afghanistan. Now, obviously, conditions are going to play a part. We saw them in round one do very well in Oman, and there the ball did come onto the bat a little bit better. There was maybe a little bit more bounce than what they're going to see in Sharjah, but they do have the habit of winning, and they, although they haven't had this opportunity very often, Scotland have been a competitive side at associate level, well, a more than competitive side at associate level for some time. And when they've had the opportunity to play against the big boys, they've had wins against Sri Lanka, they've had wins. Winning, obviously, the famous win at Edinburgh against England. And they've also had success, admittedly, in the 50-over format, but against Afghanistan. And that will give them confidence. Sharjah will be a different challenge for them, I think. We've seen so far that we did see Bangladesh and Sri Lanka play a pretty high-scoring game yesterday, but they're also two teams who are probably a bit more familiar with those conditions. Afghanistan are the same today. Scotland, maybe not so much.
On the other hand, what can we expect from Afghanistan this time? Tom Moody, a lot of the star Afghan players, how do they identify themselves when it comes to playing for the national team? Now, a lot of these players played while Afghanistan was an associate. A lot of them have gone around the world and played T20 cricket. When they come together now, especially with what's gone on in the last few months or so, what can be reasonable expectations from Afghanistan from this tournament?
Well, certainly conversations I've had over the years with the likes of Mohammad Nabi and Rashid Khan, mainly because they've been involved for so many years with Sunrisers Hyderabad. They're very proud to play for their country, and they tell stories and have very fond memories of various games that they've played and wins that they've had and challenges they've had as a growing and emerging cricketing nation. Yeah, look, Afghanistan, we all have seen over recent months the problems that they've had and the pain that they're going through, and there's no question that the players are feeling that pain as well, because they're not at home. They can't do anything about what's happening. Not many people can do anything about what's happening. They have family, they have friends, they have relatives that are still connected in Afghanistan that are facing some of those challenges. So at times they feel defenceless and incredibly worried, and understandably. But what I have experienced over the years with the Afghan players is they've got an incredible strength. That they're very resilient, and they seem to be able to compartmentalize, those challenges, and then put themselves into, the game itself and focus on that.
Yeah, you can see that when you hear Rashid Khan or Mohammad Nabi speak on the game, even in recent times, you could almost see that from wherever you might be. So our best wishes and thoughts, of course, with the people of Afghanistan. Let's hope this tournament gives them plenty of reason to smile about. But if we are to gauge what Afghanistan could possibly do in this tournament, Peter, it's an interesting few years, hasn't it? It's such a wonderful story. Every cricket follower has been endeared to the story of Afghanistan. And now over the last few years, since they've been given full status, a lot more of their players, not just the Rashid Khans and Mohammad Nabis, a lot of the other players seem to be playing in franchise cricket, in Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh, in the West Indies too. That in some ways, I guess, can only enhance the skill level of a team in comparison to what Scotland have been through.
Yeah, they're a very different side. It's like a nomad team, the Afghanistan team. As Tom says, they come together. They're very proud to represent their country, but they're playing all over the world. It's actually an interesting matchup with Scotland, who they've got guys who play county cricket, of course. They've got guys who played in the 100, for example, but they get a bit more time together as a side than Afghanistan. And it's incredibly amazing amount of talent has come out of Afghanistan in the last few years. I remember playing against actually half this team have been playing for years for Afghanistan, particularly the squad that they picked in this in this tournament. I can remember playing them many years ago, and it seemed to me that every World Cricket League, every division that they went to, they had to win to progress, and they always played with a lot of passion, but an awful lot of skill. But I can remember playing; they would win tournaments where they were clearly probably the most skillful team, but they always felt that they were a little bit the underdogs. And it's incredible how quickly that rise happened. And as I said, some of those guys, they're still around now. And we played them, I'm thinking, going way back, sort of 2010 or whatever it was. And they it's a great story, not just for those individual players who have made a name for themselves around the world, the big names that we know. But as you say, there's a lot of depth there as well. It's just a great story. I think whilst they rely on some of their big players, I think there'll be some guys pretty keen to make a name for themselves in this tournament as well. And if you look through a batting lineup, a dangerous batting lineup there, and given the conditions we're going to have and their suitability to them, they could make real waves in this tournament.
Yeah, you look at some numbers for the Afghan batters in T20 cricket in recent times, and the likes of Hazratullah Zazai as well as Rahmanullah Gurbaz, Mohammad Shahzad's a very identifiable figure in international cricket, and certainly a charismatic figure in that Afghanistan side. And they did the West Indies, albeit in a warm-up. Those numbers are pretty decent. But before that, Tom, it's funny that Peter mentions that Afghanistan play perhaps more cricket individually in pockets in franchise cricket, or the players play more cricket, but Scotland spend more time together as a team. What would you rather have going into a World Cup? Players that have played different parts of the world, or these guys who play as one team and perhaps are used to playing with each other more?
I think I'd rather have players that have got as much experience and exposure playing this format of the game around the world. There's only so much you can learn and evolve as a team within your own environment. When you're experiencing different cultures and different leagues, there's different challenges that you come across, whether that be challenges in the middle with the surfaces you play on, whether that be different challenges with the opposition that you play, the different team environments and interactions that you have. They're great learnings that to be had in that situation. And the huge advantage that, these players get the chance to face or bowl against nearly all the players that are playing in this World Cup. So Afghanistan, a lot of their key players have played against over the last 2 to 3 years. A lot of these players that they're coming across representing their countries, but they've played against them, or in some cases played with them in the various leagues they've played in the world. So I think that's a huge advantage for them. Look, it's a great thing that Scotland have got a really good a robust structure and a good domestic structure, and that's one of the reasons they have progressed to where they've progressed, which is a great story in itself. But Afghanistan don't have the benefit of that because of their circumstances. Their situation is very different in their own home hub. So, they have to make good of what is presented, and they've done that very, very well over recent times.
Yep. I mean, you think about the stories that come out over the years at ICC events from the associates, and we know that when the associates play together, Peter, you'd speak to this too, that they all get along very well. There's a great rapport between them. Now Afghanistan have made the big boys club. Scotland want to get there, and I'm guessing the best possible advertisement for that is beating as many big teams, beating as many teams ranked above you in a major tournament. They've done it to Bangladesh. This is a game that's there for them. If they have a good night tonight, maybe if they nick another one, nothing better than a couple of wins at an ICC event.
Yeah, and that was I saw Callum McLeod at a press conference the other day saying exactly that, and I think that was the route taken by Ireland and Afghanistan. Have some wins at major events, and I think of Holland, for example, we've done that in the past, and then obviously Netherlands are playing in the ODI Super League. That's something which Scotland don't actually have, so that exposure they don't have. But if you look, everyone knows there's a bit of recency bias, or whatever it is, but there's plenty of people watching this tournament. Scotland, proper, they're a good outfit, and there's every opportunity for them. They want to become a full member. That's their goal, and it's the drive of the whole organisation and the team. Some of the younger guys as well. What comes with full membership from associate membership. You cannot compare the two in terms of funding, in terms of opportunities. And they're going the right way about it, and they have done for a few years. And this is their real chance when people are really watching, as you say, at an ICC World event to show off what the skills that they've got. And they do have some skills. They've got dangerous players. They've got a batting lineup which, whilst won't be completely used to the conditions and are coming up against an incredibly challenging Afghanistan bowling attack, are not lacking in confidence. Players like George Munsey opening the batting, he's not going to hold back. A strike rate of 158 in T20 cricket. He's going to go pretty hard. And you've got Kutzer, of course, opening with him, who's been in pretty good form, scored match winning, set them up 41 off 28 in the last game against Oman. Callum McLeod there, he's got runs against Afghanistan before, and their best player, Richie Berrington, I remember watching him make a T20 100 against Bangladesh, and he hits the ball hard and straight, bit of a Tom Moody like off the spinners. If they toss it up, it's going over the sight screen. Cross will bat 3, I'm pretty sure, and he's more the anchor. We've seen at Sharjah and in the first round, that anchor role amongst a bunch of guys playing their shots has been important. I think of Gerard Erasmus from Namibia, who has maybe gone to run a ball for 30 balls, got the pace of the wicket, and then won the game for his team, and basically has carried Namibia through. Cross will be playing that role for Scotland. Obviously, it's going to be incredibly challenging for them. Very different conditions from Oman, and a step up in terms of the opposition. But I think, Scotland, they'll be pretty happy they're bowling first, and some of their bowlers, which particularly their new ball bowlers, will be hoping to make early inroads. Shahzad and Hazratullah, dangerous batters. They're going to have to come up with some way to get early wickets. We saw that in the warm-up game. The warm-up games of Afghanistan. One game, 2 ducks for the openers, 104 for 8. The other game, both the openers smashed the West Indies around, and they end up with 190. So big start to this game, I think.
Yep. And you see Scotland's bowling has actually been one of their strongest suits in round 1, at least from what we saw. So no surprises that they've gone with pretty much the team that's taken them through to the Super 12. Josh Davies in terrific form, Mark Water as well, along with Brad Wheel. So they've got it in the ball, and the experience of Kutzer, Munsey, McLeod, Berrington, Cross with bat. Now, Afghanistan, that's the first look of the shape of their team, Tom, and no real surprises that stand out. Naveen ul Haq's making waves for him as a T20 bowler around the world. Mujib plays, Rashid plays, Nabil probably bats somewhere in that middle order. And Zazai, Shahzad and Gurbaz is your top 3, with Asghar Afghan, the former captain, also slotted in there. That's perhaps their best team, Tom?
Yeah, I think it is. And the one thing that really stands out for me with the Afghan team, even though that, I mentioned they're batting probably their weaker suit, which I think is a fair judgment to make. But what their batting does do, they do it in a hurry. So all their strike rates are very high. So they'll play a very high octane brand of cricket with the bat in hand. They'll feel that's their best way of having an impact against their opponent, whether it be Scotland, which it is this evening, or whether it be any other team they come across after this evening's match. So they'll play true to their brand, and that is an aggressive brand up front, and they'll back their incredible bowlers. It is quite amazing to think that just in one team you'd have as many clever and unique bowlers in one team alone, representing your country. You've had Nabi, who's been ICC number 1 all-rounder. I'm not sure if he's still holding that position, but he's been always up there around the pointy end, being the number 1 all-rounder in T20 cricket. You've had Rashid Khan right up at the top there as well. You've had Mujib, who's been in the top 5 in that position as one of the leading bowlers. It's a dangerous team. I'm going to be intrigued to see how Scotland approach their bowlers, whether they've had discussions around whether they need to be sweeping them, whether they need to be using their feet, how they're going to try to attack Rashid Khan. Are they going to just accept that a ball off him is a win and try to deprive him of wickets? all these different stories that are going to unfold in the next 3 hours. It's going to be intriguing to see how Scotland go about their business.
Yeah, but what they'd love if they have to play that quick game, that impactful game, Afghan's batters, is the same surface that Bangladesh and Sri Lanka had, not the other stuff we've been watching for the last 2 months or so. It seems
to be honest with you, that's the thing is you may have one of those really slow surfaces, but it won't change the brand of cricket that Afghanistan will play. They'll still take that game on. And if any team can play well on those sluggish surfaces, it is a team like Afghanistan. It's more like the Australians and the Kiwis and England are going to struggle more on those type of surfaces than Afghanistan, who have to play on a variety of different types of surfaces, and their game can adapt and evolve a lot quicker, I think, in those types of conditions than other teams.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I think the toss also just plays into what should be for a better contest. Scotland wouldn't mind easing themselves into this game with ball. Let's talk a little bit about the two star players, Nabi and Rashid. And they forget, keeping aside all the other troubles that's happened politically in Afghanistan, they've had their share of issues with the Afghan Cricket Board well before that. And that eventually culminated in Rashid Khan withdrawing from T20 captaincy or stepping down, and the board then having to appoint Mohammad Nabi once more to lead the side. It's madness, but that's just how Asian cricket boards tend to be. Tom Moody's had his share of experiences with that. Doesn't change the equation, I guess, between Rashid and Nabi. They both are formidable ambassadors for Afghanistan cricket. They play together with you at the Sunrisers in your team, Tom. This whole captaincy switch thing, does it at all come in the way of leading the team?
They were still having breakfast together, don't worry. When that was all going on towards the back end of the IPL. So, yeah, look, no, I think, again, that's an element of the resilience these players have. They understand that at times there's some serious uncontrollables within their cricketing organisation, and there's no point even trying to question it. And in Rashid Khan's case, I think it was just a case of he felt he was doing the right thing that he stood for with regards to the values that he stands for. Interesting enough, since the captaincy change, a lot of the changes also followed with regards to some team selections, because I think that was the issue right at the beginning. I think there was a few team or squad selections that were a little bit random and unexpected, and that was the turning point for Rashid Khan.
Yeah. Well, like I said, that's just how it rolls in Asian boards, and we've had that many times before. But Rashid and Nabi, they're outstanding ambassadors of the game, not just for their franchises, but in particular, first and foremost, for Afghanistan. Now, let's think about numbers, shall we? Scotland are bowling first. We've seen what their bowling can do, Peter Borren. Assuming this is a good Sharjah surface and not one of the other ones, what's a good score batting first here? Because 170 was chased quite easily yesterday by Sri Lanka.
Yeah, as I said, with Afghanistan, we don't have much to go on their two warm-up games, because they've made it 190 and then 104 in 20 overs. We don't necessarily have much to go on in terms of Sharjah, because until we have a bit of a look at the wicket. What is a good score? Well, I think with the bowling attack that Afghanistan have got, conditions that we can probably expect to be rather slow and low, you'd say anything over 150 will be extremely challenging for Scotland to chase. On the other hand, how they're going to get that 150, they're not going to, as Tom said, they're not going to sit there and say, we try and get 150 by getting 10 and over in the last 5 overs or whatever it is. Because whether this is Afghanistan team, if Scotland are not on the boil and they don't get early wickets, then they could be chasing a lot more than that, because they're not going to worry about the conditions. If you're Scotland right now and you can restrict them to 150 or between 145, 155, around that number, I think you're happy. I think you'd be happy at halftime if the bowlers can do a good enough job to restrict them to that. It will take early wickets, I'll tell you that. This team, if they don't get early wickets, it's not Afghanistan will get away from them.
All right, Tom, you want to give me two numbers or one on whether this is going to be a slow surface or a good one, or is it the same number regardless because of how Afghanistan bat and what you said?
I think they're playing on the same surface as they played on last night. So I'm going to say a total of 170 to 180. is what Afghanistan will be setting themselves to do, and I think they'll be looking to get 100 of those in the first 10 overs, because that's the way they look to bat. They'll go hard early, because they'll know that the harder ball, those first 10 overs is the easiest time to try to find those boundaries. And most of their top order batters only deal in boundaries. They're not running singles.
All right, fine. This should be a fun first few overs then from Afghanistan. Thank you very much to Tom Moody and Peter Borren. More from you, gentlemen, at our halftime show on Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by Dell. Afghanistan take the field. We're thrilled that they're part of this tournament. Let's hope they give us reason to smile. And Scotland have been so impressive in round one. Should be a good one. Join us at the end of the innings.
Watch more, feel more, Dell.